Hey everyone, welcome to episode 1.1. Now in this episode we're actually gonna be working in Blender and we're actually gonna make the first part of the base mesh, which is gonna be really awesome. Keep in mind to pay close attention because at the end of the video, once again, I'll be updating the style guide. The style guide is kind of like a log that we're gonna do so that every time you learn something new, you can expand your art knowledge and set boundaries for this particular art style. I think that's a great way to, better understand what it takes to create a certain art style. So yeah, good luck, and let's jump straight into the video. So here's where I'm going to slow down a little bit, right? Because I've done the explaining part, which can be a bit boring maybe, but still very essential. But now we're actually gonna make something. So I know that Blender can be a bit daunting, especially when you start. I still don't know necessarily everything within the software because it's just humongous, the software. So I'm gonna try to slow down and I'm gonna try to explain everything I do. All right, so I had to quickly turn on this indicator at the bottom right so that you guys can see what buttons I'm pressing. I will try to mention all the things I'm clicking as well, but at least you guys are gonna be able to see if I just happen to forget something. Cool. All right, let's just break the viewport down because it's so much to take in right from the get-go. So the first thing you should understand is how to move around, which is fairly simple. If you hold down your middle mouse button, as you can see in the bottom right, if you hold it down, you're going to be able to pan around in the viewport. If you hold shift and middle mouse button, you're going to be able to move left, right, up and down. And if you just scroll, you're going to be able to zoom in and out. And if you hold alt, it's going to snap to a certain side. So either it's gonna be the Y, X, or Z. So that should help you get started to at least look around your beautiful cube that comes with the default startup file. Now, if something just happens, right? Like you're just zoomed out and you're like, holy shit, where's my model? Well, first make sure that in the top right, the cube is selected and then your mouse is here in the viewport. Then, if you press the dot button on your numpad, I should say, Blender will shoot back at the model that you've selected. So if you move a bit to the right, whoop, we're going back to it. So if you at any point can't seem to find your model, you're like, I don't know, you're too zoomed in and you don't really know how to get out. Boom. Numpad period. That's the word I was looking for. The period button. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit and let's see what are other important things. So we're gonna move this cube, and that particular button is the G button. If you press G, gonna be able to move it around. Now maybe you're like, wait, Nathan, I want to move this cube around up and down. Well, in the top right here, you can see the axes. And keep in mind that these axes are specifically for Blender. In game engines, they're slightly different, but it doesn't necessarily matter too much for us right now. If we press G again, and then hit Z right after, we're kind of constraining the movement to this cube. Just very handy if you want to line things up perfectly. If at some point you're like, oh shit, I didn't want to use the Z axis, I want to use the Y axis, you can just press Y and Blender will know, like, okay, don't worry, I got you. We'll switch over to the other axis. If I want to do it on the X axis, we'll do that as well, no problem. If you, at some point you're like, no, I don't want to use G, I pressed the wrong button, you can just right click, right? Just right click to cancel your operation and it'll just go back. By the way, I would recommend making some notes when watching this video, because it's gonna be a lot of shortcuts and stuff, and I'm gonna try to keep it to a minimum. But still, you're at least gonna have 40 different shortcuts that you're gonna be using quite a bit in this series. So write these things down. It's gonna be such a lifesaver, and it's gonna help you memorize a bit as well. So the next thing you might want to use, and this is actually very cool. If you, for example, do G and Y, so we're grabbing it and we're moving it on the X axis, and you left click, for example, you're like, oh, chips. It's now over there. Let's just say you want it back on the middle here, where we dragged it from. You can use the left Alt key and then G. The Alt key in Blender often refers to resetting. So if you, for example, press R, and you might have guessed it, R is for rotating. If you press Alt R, you reset the rotation. If you press the S key for scaling, and you press Alt S, you reset the scaling. It's super simple. So remember, Alt tends to be resetting or, you know, reverting the action. So yeah, just to recap real quick, we know how to move around, which is with the middle mouse button. We know how to look left and right by holding Shift and middle mouse button. We know how to zoom in and out. We know how to clip by holding Alt and holding the middle mouse button and moving left and right. You can get out of that particular view by just doing your middle mouse button and looking again. We know how to grab an object, how to restrain it by pressing the button that we, G, R, or S. So if we rotate and we press the same X or Y, we can restrain the rotation on those axes as well. For scaling, that's also the case. It's beautiful. Cool. So now that we know how to do these basic things, I think we should get started on making our character. I'm just gonna make sure that my Trello is open on my other screen here. And what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just for safety measures, or not necessarily safety, for making it a bit easier for me, I'm gonna just save an image here in a folder, in my downloads folder, and I'm gonna call this reference. You guys won't really be able to see this because it's on my other screen, but reference cube guy. That's just how I'm gonna call it. So if you don't have like a second monitor like me, it can be quite annoying because you have to like go back to your image and come back. So what I suggest you do, and now we're gonna learn something new, so pay attention. If you press Shift A, you get this add menu. Not to be confused by if you just like not have your box selected. If you just press A means select all, but Shift A means add. So here you can add all sorts of cool things. You can add lights, you can add armature, which is, the skeleton for your character if you want to rig it. We can add text, don't really use that too much. Curves, curves are beautiful, they're very important. And basic meshes, also something we'll be using a lot. And for some reason, a lot of people in Blender love to use the monkey, so good shit, that's over there. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a reference image. I'm gonna click here, I'm gonna go to my downloads, I'm gonna type in what I named it, and it was reference. Beautiful. There we go. So if you move around a bit, you can see that when we import a picture, it is it's kind of like it imports itself where the camera is looking at. So it's like slightly rotated. So before I move on, I'm just gonna do a few little quizzes as we're doing this, because it's gonna be quite a long video, but it's gonna be very insightful. So what I want you to do is think to yourself, how can I reset the rotation? So I'm gonna give you guys like 10 seconds or something to think about that. Alright, so if you remembered correctly, Alt R resets the rotation. And it resets it completely. So now what we need to do is we just need to press the R key again and X, because I want to rotate this on the X axis. And then on the numpad, I'm going to type 90, because I want to rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm going to just press the Enter key to confirm it. I'm gonna move this a little bit to the right here by G and X, so that I can see what we're working with here. All right, beautiful. So let's try to edit this shape. Now, first, let me explain something a little bit here, because there's a few modes here in Blender that you need to be aware of. If you go to the top left here, you have object mode, edit mode. My favorite mode, sculpt mode, is where you can sculpt your meshes, which is something we'll be discussing in a later video. Vertex paint, which is where you can paint your meshes. Weight paint is where you can add weight to your mesh, which is also something that won't make too much sense right now. And then we have texture paint here as well. I just want to talk about the first two for now to keep it really simple. So let's just go into edit mode. And now something strange has happened. Our object now has these little points that you can click. And these are called vertices. And these are very important because these are the points that we as 3D artists manipulate, where we'll be changing their position. So if I grab one and I press G, you can change your shape. If we press tab kind of toggles between the two modes that are like next to each other. In object mode, keep track of the top left indicator here. They are not there, so you can only uniformly scale this. And if you, for example, if I go here in the top right, you have item, you can see here that the location and rotation is 0 and the scale is 1, which is normal. I scale this on the X, you can see that the number goes up. This data is being transferred to the game engine as well. So in the game engine, if you were to set this back to 1, that would work. So it's not necessarily a definitive change. You can still, you know, revert that in Blender and in Engine very easily. That's why we need to mostly work in object mode. We need to work in edit mode, not in object mode. So here's what we need to do. We're gonna try to make the hat now. And I'm just gonna try to, based on this character, to kind of mirror that. So first thing I notice is that the width is slightly larger than the depth of this box. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press the S button. So we're gonna scale the box, but I want to scale it on the Y axis. I'm gonna make it just slightly smaller, like this. Beautiful. And then I also want to scale it in the height. I'm gonna press S again and then Z for restraining it there. All right, beautiful, there we go. Now, what's the next step? I feel like we need to make the ears. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So, this is gonna be a great case study because this is gonna, you know, be very important. First of all, if you don't have these points, on the top left here is where it's indicated what kind of selection mode you have. So right now I have the vertex select. Once again, these are vertices. And then you have the edge select. So now you can only select edges. Edges contain of 2 vertices. And then the third one is the face select. The face is consistent of 3 or more vertices. You can change by using the 1, 2, and 3 buttons, you know, under the escape button, kinda, under the F1, 2, and 3 buttons, to kinda go between these, because you'll have to switch a lot. If you constantly have to go here and click, your wrist is gonna hurt a lot. So don't do that. So yeah, 1, 2, 3 is those different edit modes. Very important. Now we're gonna get on very new territory again. How on earth are we going to get this little thingy out of this cube? Like, how do we do that? So there's a few ways we can do this. First one would be we select a face. So I press 3 so that I'm in face select, and then I press this face on the side. Then I could press the I button, which means insert, and then I could like bring it down, right? And then, you know, if you confirm you're still not happy, you can just press S again to scale it even more or less, whatever you want. This is what we could do. So I could just make it a bit smaller, and I could scale it on the Y axis again. And now, as you can see, we have a shape that is kind of ready. You know, it's almost the same. So we would now just have to pull that out a little bit, which is something we can do by hitting the E button, which is extrude. There we go. And then if I look at the image, you know, if I look at this image a little bit, you can see that goes down a little bit, gets smaller, which is something we can do as well. So first we're gonna scale it on the Z axis, and we're gonna scale it on the Y axis. All right, there we go. We have an ear. Now, if I'm back in edit mode here, I can still select these points, right? These 4. Or if I want to be quicker, you know, if I don't have anything selected, I go to face select. So I press 3. I can also just select the face and then GZ to pull it down a little bit because the ears are a bit short. So something we need to talk about right now is the approach we took. So what I'm going to do is I am going to duplicate this object, and I'm not going to duplicate it in edit mode. I'm going to duplicate it in object mode, because look what happens if I do it in edit mode. So in edit mode, I'm going to press A and then Shift D, duplicate. I'll move to the side. If I now go back to object mode, you can see that it's still one object. It's not 2 separate objects, which in some cases would be great, but I don't want it. So I'm going to Ctrl Z. I'm going to Shift D again. Now constrain it to the X line. And then I'm going to press P because I want to separate it. I don't, yeah, they just assigned the letter P to that, which is fine. Yeah, I want to separate this, what's it called, mesh. So if I go back into object mode, you can now see that we can have 2 faces here. So the first one, I'm just going to call face 1. Double click again, face 2. And what I want to show you guys is I'm just going to delete this. Doesn't really matter how I do that because we'll get back to that later. So now I have the cube again. And the question is, can we make this differently that might be a bit better? Not necessarily better, but it's just a different way that you can kind of think about. So as you can see, we now have these very interesting shapes. But what if I don't want that? Or what if I want them to be straight for certain purposes, which we'll get into? What you can also do is Ctrl R, which is a loop cut. So basically you're splitting it in half. I'm gonna, if you do Ctrl R, you get this yellow line, yellow greenish line. If you scroll up or down, you increase the amount of loop cuts. I just want 1 now. So I'm just gonna confirm it by clicking. But keep in mind, the first confirm only confirms how many loop cuts you want. The second one is like where you want it to be positioned along where you want it on your mesh. So I'm just gonna press 1 on the numpad. I'm not gonna do it, I'm actually gonna cancel it. I right clicked, sorry. Then I'm gonna press 1 on the numpad so that I go into front view. And then what I can do is I have to still select it. If you accidentally unselect it, just alt click, and then you'll select the whole loop. That's the thing. That's actually such a great segue to what I want to do here. If I go into the other object and I put a loop cut here, this would still work, but look. If I were to select this, you can see that the loop kind of stopped. As to if I were to go here, and I would make another loop cut, it's still going around. See what happens? Here, I can't do that. I can't make another loop cut like this. Because the geometry, the way the lines are going, it's going like this. Which is fine, but maybe you're not done yet. Maybe you want to make a whole lot of stuff, and you need to add more loop cuts. And you can only really do that through here. And as you can see, they kind of follow these tilted lines. Do that here. They're still going straight. I'm gonna try to use a method where I can still make the ear. So I'm gonna bring this up, alt clicking the line, like I told you. And I'm gonna do Control R again, and make another cut here. Then I'm gonna press 7. 7 is for like looking from above. I'm gonna press Control R again. I'm gonna make a cut here. I'm gonna make a cut here. And as you can see, we now have the same result. I'm gonna extrude a little bit. Then I'm gonna scale it down a little bit. Scale it on the Y. Let's see from the front, it's a little bit too much to the right. I'm gonna grab, just wiggle a bit. All right, beautiful. So now we have two faces, two heads, I should say, that are almost identical. But the way the lines are going is different. So both have their pros and cons, but with this one, look, if I make a loop cut, the lines are still going straight. Which could, depending on what you're making, make a huge difference. So I'm just showing you these two methods to kind of show you how you can approach these modeling things. Because for example, if I want to do something above the head, right? If I want to model something here, I get this shape when I insert something, when I press I. Over here, I still have like a cube shape, right? So if I do I and scale it down, you know, it's easier. Or even better, I just do this, I have a cube here. It's just things that you have to kind of consider. So the only thing is that if I press A, in the bottom right, you can see how many vertices, edges, and faces I have. So 34 and 36 vertices. How much does this one have? Yeah, so this one has a whole lot less. So this one has 16 vertices and 14 faces. So in terms of optimization, this one is the winner. In terms of maybe editing it a little bit better and keeping nice edge flow is what we would call is, this one would win. I haven't seen the model here, but you know, depending what platform your game's gonna be played on, this would make a huge impact. If you, for example, make a mobile game, I would go with this one, right? It's the most performant. But if you're like making it for PC, I'd be like, well, this one is fine, you know, this is great. I think I'm gonna have to make a decision here which one we're gonna kind of continue with. I think we're gonna continue with this one because it's just a bit easier. I'm gonna delete the right one. So in object mode, click, then hit that delete key. Or here in the hierarchy panel, you know, you can also delete, but this is a bit faster. So something else that's really important in modeling is being efficient, because if you're making a large game, you're gonna have to do a lot of things, right? So if I, for example, could save some time by not having to do anything, why wouldn't you, right? So if we somehow could get this right ear over here, how amazing would that be? Like, we just have to do maybe 1 or 2 things, and then we have the exact same result here on the other side. Well, once again, great segue into something else that's really important to talk about. If you go on the right here, as you guys can see, we're slowly covering most of the viewports here. On the right here, you have all these cool icons. There are quite a few, and I don't necessarily intend of covering all of them, but I, for now, just want you to focus on this modifier properties one. It's the blue one, the first of the blue row. And as you can see, it's allowing us here to add a modifier. And basically, if we click on this, you get all these cool modifiers. And trust me, each one of these modifiers has its own amazing use. Some of these modifiers you'll be using almost every 10 minutes, and some of them you'll only use occasionally. So there are tutorials about there who will explain all these modifiers to you. I will be focusing on the ones that I think will be needing for this particular course. So over here we have the mirror tool. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that sounds pretty useful, because basically what we'll be doing is we will be mirroring our work. And that sounds like something we would need. So if I click this, as you can see, the ear has appeared. And maybe you're like, wow, I'm done. Beautiful. Yeah, yes and no. You're not really done, because there's a small problem. If we were to confirm this modifier, which I'm gonna do, so I'm gonna apply this, you will see if we go into edit mode that we have this really weird looking texture. Like when we select it, you can see it better. You have like these really weird stripes. If you ever see this, this means that there are 2 faces on top of each other. So it's like two planes trying to fight on who's being seen. If I move this back a little bit, you can see like, oh ships, look, there's a whole nother mesh here. And the reason that's the case, I'm just going to Ctrl Z until I have my modifier back. The reason is, if I just make a screenshot here, the mirror uses this orange point to mirror it. So, but because we already have stuff here, so if I just cancel this, as you can see, we already have stuff on the left side here. So everything that is already here will also be copied to the other side, and vice versa. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to make sure that one side of the mesh is empty. So with the mesh selected, I'm gonna press tab, gonna press 1. And then what you could do is you could like select these 4 vertices. Or maybe you're a bit ahead of me, you can press number 3 and just click the face. Or what you could also do, and this is something new again, maybe you want to write this down, is if you press Z, you get these 4 options, which is the shading. At the moment we're in solid, which is the most performant. That'll let your Blender move really smoothly. We have material preview, so if you have any material on your mesh, you would be able to see that here. rendered is what it would look like if you go into the rendered mode, and if you have lights and emission and all that stuff, that'll be there. And then we have wireframe, which is quite useful because that'll only show us the points or the edges or the faces, but we can look through our object, which is just fantastic. So what you can do is, like, if you want to select all of this, you can just click, drag. If you can't do this, it's because this tool on the top left is not the select box. Maybe it's like, if you press W, it will change. So maybe it's on this. As you can see, I can't drag anything. I need the box one. I'm gonna drag over this one, and I'm gonna GX, gonna move it. If I now turn my modifier back on, you can see I go back into solid view with Z. You can see now we have a beautiful mirror. There you go. There's however one problem. There's a little gap, and we don't want that. And if I press G and X, nothing is stopping me. I don't necessarily know exactly where the dots connect. And that's why they included this clipping option over here. If I click this and I press G and X again, see? I can't go any further. The moment the vertices connect, they're stuck. They're stuck together and they will not cross the middle point, which is perfect. So I'm gonna leave it at this, but I'm gonna left click to confirm the action. But I want to show you guys something, and this is something I've been doing very wrong for a long time when I was just starting out. If I press Ctrl R for the loop cutting again, this happens. By the way, you can do it on the left side because that's the mirrored side. But as you can see, it goes through the middle and there's a line there. That's not good. So keep in mind that, you know, we want to remove faces that you don't see on the outside. So if we scroll in a little bit, you can see that we have a face here in the middle, and we can just delete that. And now it's perfect. Now we have a mesh that we can proudly present to our, I don't know, team or art director. There's no mistakes. The loop cut stops in the middle over here, but it'll go around because it's being mirrored, obviously. So this is great, right? This is perfect. By the way, if that maybe went a bit too fast, I just selected the face and I pressed the delete button. And then over here you get like all sorts of options. I just select face because I have a face selected. It's that easy. And then I go back into object mode. And yeah, I'm really happy about this. So at any given point, you could still change the proportions of this character, right? Like you could go back into edit mode, you could select this face and then GY, right? Like if you want your character to have quite a small head or something, just bring this in and have it like this. Once again, that's total personal preference. There's nothing I can say to you that will change that. It's just the way you want your character to look like, and that's fine. Cool, so I think we should take a short break if you're watching the video still. I think in the next episode, we're gonna start working on the arms and legs. And yeah, that's gonna be very, very exciting. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this course, episode 1. It's a bit long, but I just don't like to do short clips and stuff because, you know, it's just, you have to sit through this. Like, you just have to take it in. For all I care, you just rewatch the whole course again and just pause the video, make notes, try to you know, work along, and you're gonna be just fine. So yeah, this is a great place to pause. It is indeed a good time to pause. Guys, this is the end of the video. I just want to briefly throw out there that I started Patreon. I tried to make some really cool tier things. Yeah, check it out. If you can help the channel in that way, that'd be great. If not, the content will still be free, so don't worry. It's just, you know, if you feel like you want to contribute, that's totally okay. So yeah, check the Patreon, and in the next video we're obviously gonna make the body and the arms and stuff. So yeah, be sure to subscribe. So yeah, you don't miss the next video. So yeah, have a good one, guys. See ya.